Hey neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install CURT's T-connector vehicle trailer wiring harness here in our 2015 Dodge Durango. If you're planning on towing a trailer, then having a 4-pole wire harness to transfer over your light signals is going to be a key component. With the CURT T-connector style that we have today, this is going to plug into our taillights so that way we don't have to splice anything in, we're not cutting any wires. It's going to be a much easier and quicker install overall. So this 4-pole connector is going to give you those traffic signals so that way your lights are transferring back to the trailer, or if you have a bike rack that has some lights built into it, it's a nice addition so that you can easily show everybody on the road exactly what your intentions are. This one is going to come with everything in the kit that you're going to need besides some heat shrink butt connectors. So any connection point that you have that's outside the vehicle, if they're going to give you a butt connector for it, I highly recommend swapping that out and just switching for a heat shrink. That way you can protect your wiring. So we have a powered converter that's going to be hiding behind our rear fascia here. And what we do with that is run a power wire out to the battery. For that connection point, you definitely want a heat shrink. That way that's not going to corrode, and then over time your converter goes out. So with that heat shrink protecting it, it's going to last a whole lot longer and perform correctly. Since this is just a 4-pole, it's not going to transfer over any brake signals or run any kind of power line back if you're trying to recharge your battery on the trailer. So if that is the case for you, you'll definitely want to pick up a ECBC7 kit, which would also plug onto this and then allow you to run a couple other wires, one for your brake controller, one for ground, and then another one up to the battery for power. And that's going to allow you to activate those brakes on the trailer. And it's going to come with a mounting bracket, but it won't come with the bracket to actually clamp onto your trailer hitch. So you will want to also pick up a no-drill mounting bracket. And for this specific one, I would say a short bracket is going to be the right length for it. So if you go with that long one, it's going to stick way too far out and look a little goofy. So I would definitely pick that short bracket up and the ETBC7 kit. Unless you have a factory tow package, then this wiring might not be the correct one for you. You might want to see if there is a 7-way that you can just plug right into that factory package, make your install a whole lot easier. Now, if you are wanting to do this yourself, I will show you in just a little bit, but if you're not wanting to do this install yourself, then please use our dealer locator. You'll enter in your zip code and you can find a shop to get this wiring installed professionally. Starting off for installation, we're going to disconnect the negative battery terminal. So we'll need to come to the passenger side. You'll want to run that front passenger seat all the way forward as much as you can, because right under it is where your battery is going to be located. Sitting right down under this little cover right here, so you can pop that up and then use a 10mm socket to loosen up that terminal. And pull it off. Now I'm going to use that to kind of also help keep it out of the way so that it doesn't end up touching the battery again. Next, we're going to remove the 2 push pins holding in our taillights for both our driver and passenger side. I typically like to start it off with just a flat head, and you can kind of work it in to get that first part out. You come back with your trim panel removal tool and pull it the rest of the way. So there's going to be 2 little pins that are popped into little sockets on the back side here. If you take your trim panel tool, you can kind of pry backwards on the little push pin bracket that we had here. Try and pop those out just a bit. There we go. And there's those 2 pins I was talking about. Now we'll want to disconnect our wiring harness, so we'll press down on that tab right there. Pop it out. Now sometimes you might have to kind of push in first and then pry down on that before you pop it out, because some of these like to stick. There we go. And we can set our taillights aside. Over here on our passenger side, we're going to pass through pretty much all of our wire harness except for our green wire right here with our 2 connectors, because those are going to mate up with our taillight wiring. And then the rest of this is going to live in our bumper, and we're going to trace over to the other side so that we can connect with our yellow and brown wire. So I'm going to start by feeding that yellow and brown wire through, because these connectors are pretty large. We'll get those out of the way. Next, you can slot in the 4-pole and then just keep working the rest of it through. Once you get it down to just that green wire, you can connect. Making sure that they fully click in. And we'll push that down. Now we'll get under the bumper so that way we can route everything across. Now that I've pulled all my wiring down, I am going to push back up over our exhaust and our heat shield here. There's a bumper beam that's running all along right here. It's got some support posts going out towards the frame for mounting. We're gonna just try and tuck everything right over that so that this stays away from anything that's gonna be hot, just because we have exhaust coming out here. And then there should be another one here, but the muffler is missing right now. So, like I said, just try and keep this up away on that bumper beam. You're gonna need some zip ties. There will be some in your kit, but it wouldn't hurt to also pick up a few extras as well. So I'll route that over and then I can show you how I did it. Ran a fish stick through so that way we can pull our wiring up on the other side. And I'm gonna use this and just some electrical tape. Typically I'll try to throw one connector back and one forward just to make it a little bit easier to pull it through here. And here's our other. We'll plug in our connector, make sure that nothing slips out. I'll plug in my little connector here and we'll pop the tail light back into place. Now, I'm not going to push those 2 push pins in just yet. We'll check our wiring first, and then if we're all good, I'll pop those 2 in and the tail lights will be fully secured. Tuck our wiring back down. Fit in here nice and tight. So I've pulled my converter down. It's sitting right above this beam right here. So I've also pulled the 4-pole wire across the center because we will be adding on a hitch a little bit later. So that's going to eventually get tied into that. But our brown and yellow wire that runs over to our other taillight, I just stuck behind the beam and that little plastic that's running up for our fascia. And you just come all the way across. You'll come up over the frame, and then I used a stick just to run down to pull our wiring up through so that we can connect it to our taillight. So now that I've zip tied my power wire, I've also ran a little bit extra and I kind of tucked it back in the middle around this post so that way it can meet up with our power wire. I've also secured the converter box. So they give you double-sided tape. They don't really give you a great spot to install it on this vehicle. They say just stick it to anything that's flat, like any kind of flat surface. Honestly, this double-sided tape is going to fall right off after a little bit of use. So I zip tied it twice. I got one on the upper part and then one below it because there's a mounting tab that comes off of it, but without removing the whole fascia, there's no way to actually screw it in. So it zip tied it to the upper post that runs down to our beam that connects it to the fascia. We'll now crimp on a heat shrink butt connector. That's not going to be included with your kit. I highly recommend picking some up though because you don't want to have this connection corrode and then you lose all your lights on here. But we'll crimp that down. And then connect it to the wire we ran over to our battery. And then all this excess, I'll zip tie up out of the way. My ground, I'm just going to use the self-tapper that's included in the kit, and we're going to run this through the pinch weld right here. That way we know there's nothing on the other side that we have to worry about accidentally drilling through. With our battery sitting right under the passenger front seat, it's not too far away. Typically, we're going to be running our wire all the way up to the engine compartment and then shooting straight up to get up to our battery. So we've got a shorter run this time. With our black wire starting out right here, I have not connected just yet. I kind of just ran it through just to see what this was going to look like first. But we'll trace this along, and I am going to come back and add in some more zip ties just to help secure this up to the other wiring and keep it out of the way. But behind this, you can see we have a little bit of space. There is a heat shield over our muffler here so that we don't have to worry about this wiring getting tore up. And typically, if you trace the other wiring that's already there, it's a good sign that that's still far enough away that you don't have to worry about it. But now on this inside here, I have it tucked up over these, and then you can see it's coming out right here. Comes over the frame. And here's where I'm saying I'm going to need to zip tie it because this is a little bit loose right here. So I'll zip tie it up with those other hoses we have ran. And then I came over to the gas tank, and at each one of these brackets I just have it sitting above it. And there's another wire harness that runs the same way, so it gives us a nice spot to zip tie to. Once we came over to here, this is right where our battery's sitting. There's a rubber grommet right here, and it comes out on the right side of the battery. If you pop this out, you can stick your finger in there, and you can feel the battery sitting right here. All I did was I just took my knife and just kind of cut out a little center section so that I could push my cable through, and then I ran about a foot of wire up into there. In your kit, you're going to have a fuse holder. You'll also have a ring terminal, as well as some butt connectors. Here's where we're going to use the standard butt connectors. We're not going to do the heat shrink just because this isn't an enclosed space, so we don't have to worry about any moisture getting in there and corroding it. So with that said, I am going to get this ready because we are going to be attaching to the post coming off of our positive. So if we look at the negative, there's another little nut you can pop off, and you could add on little things like our fuse holder here. So I'm going to crimp on my ring terminal real quick on one side, and then on the other side we'll use our butt connector. And we'll connect that to our power wire that we ran from our converter. That crimped on, we can then push it down back in here. And then using a 10mm socket, I am going to remove that nut all the way back here. Since it's tight, I loosened up the nut to pull the whole terminal off. Now we can finally get to that nut so that we can add on our accessory. So once again, 10mm socket. Pop that off, and then throw on our ring terminal. There we go. Now once we have our connection tight again, we can put that terminal back on. So tuck that down in there. And we'll tighten that nut back to secure our terminal. Now we can pop the negative terminal back in place, and then we'll put a fuse in our fuse holder, which will also be included in your kit. Press in our fuse. Make sure it's in nice and tight, and then you can cover it up with the cap. Last thing to check is just make sure all of our functions are coming through properly. So we'll start with our running lights. Good. All right, we'll do brake lights, left turn, and then our right turn. Well, I think that does it for today's look at and installation of the CURT custom T-connector wire harness here on our 2015 Dodge Durango. Please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department. We'd be happy to help you out on your journey.